The sun bled into the horizon. Crimson and gold streaks painted the sky a fiery kiss goodbye. Below, Sherwood Forest stood cloaked in lengthening shadows. The ancient oaks, silent sentinels to countless seasons, whispered in the evening breeze. But tonight, the forest held its breath. A sense of foreboding hung heavy in the air. This was not the usual peace of twilight. It was the silence before a storm. The air grew colder as darkness deepened. The rustle of leaves seemed amplified in the stillness. A twig snapped, the sound sharp and sudden. Somewhere, an owl hooted, its mournful call echoing through the trees. And within the heart of the forest, a lone figure prepared for battle. Sir Eadric of Greyford, a name whispered in fear by the wicked, chanted in hope by the oppressed. Once a nobleman, now an outlaw, he was known throughout the land as the Shadowhawk. His name struck fear into the hearts of tyrants. He was a symbol of defiance against injustice. For years he had fought against the darkness that threatened to engulf their world.
His face, weathered by years of struggle and etched with the lines of countless battles, was grimly set. His eyes, the color of steel, burned with unwavering resolve. Tonight was different. Tonight he faced his greatest challenge. Tonight he would risk everything to save his people.
Aelfric, a name that tasted like poison, a name that brought only misery and fear. A cruel and ruthless warlord, he had seized control of the surrounding lands, his iron fist crushing all who opposed him. Villages lay in ruins, their inhabitants either slaughtered or enslaved. His latest act of barbarity was the capture of innocent villagers.
Their fate hung precariously, a cruel spectacle planned for dawn. Aelfric, drunk on power and reveling in fear, had declared a public execution. He aimed to make an example of them, to crush the spirit of defiance that Eadric embodied. This was a challenge, a direct affront to the Shadowhawk.
The weight of their lives lay heavy on Eadric's heart. He knew the risk he was about to take. Aelfric was cunning, his forces vast and ruthless. This was a trap, a carefully laid plan to lure the Shadowhawk out and end his defiance permanently.
But Eadric did not hesitate. He would not abandon his people to such a fate. He checked his weapon's sword, singing softly as it left its scabbard, a quiver full of arrows, each one fletched with eagle feathers, each one a whisper of death to his enemies. He was outnumbered, outmatched, but not out of hope. He would fight, as he always had, for justice, for freedom, for the people he loved.
Section 5, into the lion's den. The forest floor was soft beneath his leather boots. With each step, Eadric moved like a phantom, his dark cloak blending him with the shadows. The weight of responsibility, the knowledge that so many lives depended on him, spurred him forward. The moon, a silver sliver in the night sky, offered little light. But he knew these woods like the back of his hand. The air grew heavy with the stench of fear and damp earth. The silence was broken only by the distant cry of a wolf and the pounding of his own heart. He could feel the presence of Aelfric's men lurking in the shadows, their eyes searching for him. They were waiting for him, but he would not give them the satisfaction of an easy kill. This night he would be the hunter, not the hunted. A clearing opened up before him, illuminated by the flickering light of torches. In the center stood Aelfric, a mountain of a man clad in black armor. His eyes, cold and cruel, scanned the tree line, searching for any sign of movement. He smiled, a slow, predatory grin that sent chills down Eadric's spine.
So, the Shadowhawk graces us with his presence. I was wondering when you'd show your feathered behind.
He pressed his foot down on the back of a bound villager. A whimper escaped the captive's lips.
Come out, Eadric, or watch another one of your precious villagers die.
Eadric stepped into the circle of light. His hand rested on the hilt of his sword, his fingers drumming a silent rhythm of defiance.
Let them go, Aelfric. This has gone on long enough.
Aelfric laughed, a harsh, grating sound.
You think you can bargain with me? You're outmatched, outnumbered. You're finished, Shadowhawk.
With a roar, Aelfric charged, his sword whistling through the air. Eadric met his attack with a clang of steel. Sparks showered the ground as their blades clashed again and again. They moved with the grace of seasoned warriors, their dance of death illuminated by the flickering torchlight. The battle raged, a whirlwind of steel and fury. Eadric fought with the strength of 10 men, his movements a blur as he parried and countered each of Aelfric's blows. But Aelfric was relentless, his attacks growing fiercer with each passing moment. Eadric felt a sharp pain in his side as Aelfric's blade found its mark. He stumbled back, his breath catching in his throat. He reached for an arrow, his fingers closing around the shaft. He knocked it, drew back the string, his eyes locking with Aelfric's. It was a desperate gamble, but it was all he had left. With a whispered prayer to the ancient gods of the forest, he released the arrow. It flew through the air, a silver streak of vengeance. There was a collective gasp as the arrow found its mark, burying itself deep in Aelfric's chest. Aelfric's eyes widened in surprise, his hand flying to the arrow protruding from his chest. He looked at Eadric, his face contorted in a mixture of rage and disbelief. Then, with a final groan, he crumpled to the ground, his reign of terror finally at an end. Eadric watched him fall, a sense of relief washing over him. He had won, but the victory had come at a terrible cost. He sank to his knees, his hand pressed against his wound, his vision blurred, the sounds of battle fading into a dull roar. He could vaguely make out the shapes of his comrades rushing to his side, their faces etched with concern. He had one last arrow left, one he had reserved for himself. He wouldn't let Aelfric take his dignity in the end. He would die on his own terms, a free man. As he closed his eyes, he saw the faces of the villagers he had sworn to protect, their eyes filled with gratitude and sorrow. The Shadowhawk was gone, but his legend would live on, inspiring future generations to fight for what was right, to stand against tyranny and to never give up hope.